Pat McDonald.
Yes.
I had pitched you talking
Yes,
about
Ian Simmons.
Yes, well, I had pitched you talking about West Side Story, which is celebrating an
Yeah.
anniversary this year, and
Yeah.
I think your response was something like you've talked about that movie to death, uh,
Well, I've
and
seen it to death too. I've seen
okay,
it to death. It's just one of those movies that I have no interest in revisiting.
fair
I
enough.
mean, to be blunt.
Well, but well, let's rewind the tape here. Do you like
Sure.
West Side Story? Are you a fan, or
Oh,
do you?
I like it a lot. I just when you grow up with a film like that, and that's one of those ones that you probably see for the first time when you're 11 or 12. As I'm almost positive I saw it that early. So I don't want to name the number of years that have intervened since then, but then you go through the point where you see it again, like in college or the big screen, and you see it again when you have an interest in movies, and you see it again when HBO comes along, et cetera, et cetera. And I simply have burnt out on it. I can't fathom it anymore.
It also doesn't
I'm
help that
looking
it's
forward to
like
the Spielberg version, though.
yeah, that'll be very interesting to see, but it doesn't help that the movie it's like 3 hours long or something.
Yeah,
I've only
yeah,
seen it
and
once, and I saw it the way that it should be at the Music Box 70 millimeter Film Festival
absolutely.
long time ago.
Okay.
So I pitched this to you. You rightfully said, I'm kind of done with that movie, and that's fine. But you had suggested Prom, the
The
Prom,
the prom.
the Prom, which came out late last year.
Yes.
It was like an award season contender, and
Yep.
it's on Netflix. So anybody watching this right now, listening to this discussion, can go watch it if they haven't seen it yet. We are probably going to talk some spoilers here, so maybe bookmark this and come back later.
I
Uh,
don't. I don't mind talking spoilers for this one because in a musical sense, it isn't spoiled. You
well,
know.
that's also true. It's also based on a Broadway, like a pretty popular Broadway production, so
Yep.
it's probably all out there. I didn't really know anything about this until
I
the
didn't
movie
either.
version.
I did not
So
either.
it's it had one strike against it going in, which is it's Ryan Murphy, and he is still on my naughty list from that Ratchet thing that he did last year, also for
I didn't
Netflix.
know he was part of Ratchet. I saw his list of credits, and the only thing that I could connect to was the first season of The Politician, which I think is just top level drawer brilliant.
What is
And
that? I think I missed that.
second season is horrible. It is Netflix
Okay,
series,
it's
The
called The
Politician.
Politician.
Yeah, if you wanted to talk about that, but it's a 10-hour first season, so I don't know if you want to commit to something like that at this point.
Maybe down the line.
Yeah.
Tell you
Yeah.
when the congressional races come up in 2 years, we'll do Real Politic Part 2.
There you go. There you go.
But
That would be
okay,
a good time to revisit.
yeah. So the Prom. So you were not familiar with the stage play, neither was I. So
I
you're
was
just
not.
going into this as a movie with big stars, and the premise
Yes.
is kind of cool. It's a small town in Indiana called Edgewater High. There's a young girl named Emma who wants to go to the prom, but she gets a lot of flack because there's no way they're going to let her take her girlfriend.
Right.
Yes, she's a young high school lesbian. It's the big talk of the town. They decide to cancel the prom, but then they decide to put on the prom. Meanwhile, in New York, there is a quartet of Broadway performers slash flamboyant egotists whose play
The greatest
bombs.
narcissist you'll ever
Yes,
meet.
their production is called Eleanor, and it's Meryl Streep as Eleanor Roosevelt pushing around FDR, played by James Corden. Totally
Just a
flops.
brief glance of it was enough for me, but
I would like
while
to think
chorus boys danced in the background.
I'd like to think if there's a Blu-ray or something of this, that there's like an Easter egg you can unlock where you see like a portion of that musical, because I'd love to see
Well,
that.
there's two musicals in there. There's Eleanor, and then I don't remember, it has Moon in the title.
Swallow the Moon, I think is what it's
Swallow the
called.
Moon.
Yeah.
Swallow the Moon. Awesome. And we actually get to see the big show-stopping number from Swallow the Moon.
A couple of times, and in different contexts too, which was really cool. But so these Broadway folks, they're play bombs, and they're like, "What are we gonna do?" And they, how can we stay relevant?
The big quartet, because the quartet's a star-orama.
Right. Well, it's Meryl Streep, as Dee Dee. Barry is played by James Corden. You've got Nicole Kidman. I don't remember her.
Her name is Angie
Angie
Dickens.
Dickinson. No relation.
No relation.
And then Andrew Rannells as Trent
Yeah,
Oliver.
who is just a rising star right now, and he just absolutely killed that role, I thought.
Yeah, he was great. With the exception of Nicole Kidman, who,
Yeah.
she's fine. I just think she was too big a star for that part.
Well, and also I didn't get what her function was. It could have. There's where you want to cast your Broadway person who did it to bring it something different. Where it seemed to me that Kidman had 2 days to do all the scenes, so they had to pile it in. Yeah, that was to me that was the only miscast, if you will.
Yeah, I think she did fine. It's just that
Yeah,
because there wasn't a whole lot, she definitely got the short shrift because the other three fill up the rest of their part of the story, so
yeah,
broadly. It could have
yeah.
even just been
She
a
does she
trio.
does
Yeah.
get her number though. She gets
Hmm.
the Zaz number. So
Yeah. But so they decide that the best way that they can stay relevant is not by doing another show, but by becoming cause celeb, as they say, finding a cause and then standing up for it and, going out
when
there and
they
doing a media blitz.
when they first enter the Indiana PTA meeting and proclaim, "We are liberals from New York," that's what got me with all their signs, and it's just perfectly done.
Yeah, and Kerry Washington is the head of the PTA at Edgewater, and she's the one essentially leading the charge to cancel prom because Emma's life choices. I was going to say lifestyle, but they drill down further than that in the
Yeah,
bigotry.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like her life choices do not match with the values of our community. That kind of spiel
Well,
that we've heard a
and
million
again,
times.
I think I thought Kerry Washington was terrific, but I
Hmm.
think again a slight miscasting there because of her type. You know, I didn't. They needed something a little more starchy to represent that part of it. That was just my feeling.
What do you mean
Again, she did a
starchy?
great job with it. Well, conservative, starchy, uh, putting up the wall that you can't get through that barrier. Whereas, Kerry Washington, she's, African American, multicultural. It's difficult. It was difficult for me to picture her as somebody who's going to hold up the lesbian prom.
I just imagine her going
Which
in there
is
with well, you said hold up. I imagined a stick up, like, give me your money. No, but no, actually, that's an interesting point, and we can kind of jump ahead to something I want to talk about.
sure.
Um, I love the spirit of this movie. I love the idea. I think the performances are great, but it is kind of a miss for me because I'd say the connective story threads don't seem like they were thought out very well. And the
Interesting.
and the one thing I wanted to talk about is the casting of Kerry Washington as Mrs. Green, and then also Keegan Michael Key as the principal. What was his name? Sorry, I'm going to do the IMDb thing here and,
That
and
though
find.
I
Oh,
have
Principal Hawkins. Yeah,
Principal Hawkins, yeah.
they are two black characters in a town. This movie hates Indiana. It despises
I
the
don't think it
Midwest.
hates it. I think it's just making fun of it.
Well, but here's the thing: like,
I grew
there's
up in Indiana,
yeah, I know.
bro.
My look, no, my family is from Indiana. It does, for as much as it caricatures the New York liberal kind of Broadway elite, as we've seen in our main trio, it also caricatures the flyover states, as it were, as a bunch of, hicks, ignoramuses. They're like 70 years behind the
Well,
times.
but the irony is, of course, this school is the gayest school ever.
But it's not. And here we'll get to that too. But okay, so what I'm saying is I haven't seen the stage production, so I don't know if these two roles were cast as African American in it, or if it
Right,
was more of we're putting this on Netflix. The
right,
stage play was 2016. This 4 or
right.
5 years really makes a difference as far as it being
2018, actually.
Yeah, I think the first production was in 2016. It went to
Oh,
Broadway in
okay,
2018. Yeah,
gotcha.
thanks for correcting that though.
No, no,
Um,
I didn't know about the first iteration.
well, I looked it up on Wikipedia, so it probably
Uh,
came out like in 2014. Anyway, no, I
exactly.
but so I don't know if the casting of these two African American actors was something from the play, or if it's more of a it's 2020, we got
Well,
to diversify that we've got four white rich stars as our protagonists. We got to mix things up a bit. But I think in doing that, it raises some questions about what's going on in this town and their specific prejudices. I would think that an African American woman with a position of prominence in this backwards town as it's painted, they specifically zero in on the homophobia and not so much racism, which I thought was
right,
very interesting. But I'm like,
right.
of all the people to be staunchly against someone
Yep.
for their lifestyle, life choices, the way they were born, I thought it was very interesting that they chose the black character to represent that. And one of the things I
Yes.
wish they had drilled down in, and this is not the movie that they made, but I'm like watching it thinking, this is not interesting enough to be exactly what it is for me. I would love to see a film where they break into that kind of
Well,
idea.
it's also a musical, so there's so many flights of fancy. You have to take what you get as far as connective tissue. But I get your point.
But I mean, you could work that into the fabric of the music and the songs and
Oh
and
yeah,
and work that into the
yeah.
story. We were talking about West Side Story, which dealt with issues of race and class, very effectively. So that just kind of bugged me. But yeah, having said that, I think Kerry Washington was good. I thought Keegan Michael Key was for me the discovery of the movie. Uh, I just he seemed like he was a romantic comedy leading man with just that touch of drama.
Yep.
I could watch an entire movie where he's flirting with Meryl Streep. In fact, I want that movie.
He did. He was great. He was great. I love his song "We Look to You," where he
Mm.
was talking to her about and I love musicals when they movie musicals especially when they're in a hyper realistic setting in Applebee's, but suddenly the whole thing fades to black except their booth, and then he goes off into the New York set, which is amazing. That set that they built to show the street, it was just crazy.
Yeah, it was really cool, and it reminded me a lot of. Well, I've never been to Broadway, but I imagine I've been to stage productions and stuff. I can put myself there.
Sure.
But okay, let's talk about Applebee's. And one of the knocks against small town America is it's a cliche that these sophisticated New York folks blow into town. They're staying in a hotel and they're
The
outraged because they
hotel
don't.
sequence is hilarious. Where's the spa? Where's the doctor? It was killing me. Putting up toadies. Okay, now I get a suite.
Here, and that was cute. My problem is I don't know where this movie is trying to be a parody of these people versus also paint them as somewhat realistic comedic characters.
I'm going to go on the parody side.
There was
I
too much
don't have
drama in this for it to be parody,
I
though.
don't have I don't have as many problems with it as you, but I absolutely see the problems because right now on Rotten Tomatoes, it's rotten. It
Oh
ain't
yeah,
fresh. It's at 56. And at first I was a little angry about that, but then I started reading them and people had good points. Some of them didn't have good points. Like comparing something to the play is like ridiculous because a very tiny percentage of people see the play. And if you're saying, well, it wasn't as good as the play, well, I guess, okay, Mr. New York, sorry, you know. But
yeah.
the one I print out says the prom takes giant leaps, literally and metaphorically, in its story progression without earning it. And I think that's what you're saying. But to me, that's critic talk. But I still think that if there is a criticism I have besides Nicole Kidman, is that it seems to the narrative drifts from sequence to sequence without distinct ties to put it together. However, I didn't mind that. I didn't mind it at all. I gave this one 4.5 out of 5 when I first saw it. So that's we usually say at the end, but I'm going to say it now because
No, I'm struggling with that idea of the rating. I'd probably give it 2.5. or 3, probably inching
Two and
closer
a
to
half.
3
Yeah.
out of 5.
Well, you liked it. I usually put 3 in the 5-star system. 3 is my, that's I'm giving it a recommendation.
Yeah.
Buyer beware, but here's my recommendation at
And that's the
3.
thing. I'm recommending it, but with a boatload of caveats. But those
Sure.
caveats still aren't enough for me to sink it. Um, but yeah,
Were you
I was
listening to some of the lyrics in the songs, by the way?
I was, and that's
Great
the well,
wordplay.
and that's the thing is the music. Did we get I think we got a copy of the soundtrack as part of
I think
award
maybe
season.
one song.
Oh,
I
maybe
don't know
that's
if we
what they
got
gave
the
us
whole
single.
soundtrack.
Well, then I'll go out and I'll put my money down for this score or the soundtrack because it's great. I don't know if I was less impressed with the songs towards the end because I was less impressed with the second part of this movie,
Right.
but certainly the opening and I think up to it, including Keegan Michael Key's wonderful song,
Yeah.
it's all wonderful and hummable, and I want to listen to it again.
Well, how
Uh,
about It's Not About Me, the Meryl Streep song, where
yeah,
she
and that's
keeps saying the kid's name.
yeah.
And then goes up to a girl who looks a little more stereotypically lesbian, which I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah.
One of the lines was hashtag Dee Dee takes yokels by storm.
I
That's
missed that.
what she said to put on Instagram. Dee Dee takes local yokels by storm.
And that's kind of what I'm saying about this attitude about the Midwest. It's an easy target, and I kind of wish they dug a little deeper, like that
Yeah,
Applebee's thing when they're
yeah.
talking about is there any place to eat around here? And I think there was another conversation about where are we going to get a dress or a tux or something like that. They're
We're going
talking
to
about
Saks. Well, there's no Saks here. They have a
right,
Kmart.
yeah, Kmart. That's what it was.
And we'll
I
go to the Reba McEntire section. Let me pre-shop.
I'm saying there are independent restaurants
Oh
and
yeah. They were making
clothiers in
fun.
Indiana, and that's
They were distinctively trying to put these little facades on them so that they could create the humor. Of course, somebody knows what Applebee's is. There's Applebee's in New York City, you know.
yeah. I guess my critique overall of the film is that and I don't know who the show creators are. Ryan Murphy directed this; he didn't write it, and I think they got the original people who wrote the Broadway musical to work on the
Right.
screenplay, and that's fine. It's just that the attitudes and the representations in this movie feel like they are a vindication on the part of someone who was gay, young, and bullied in school, possibly 30 years ago, writing a hopeful love letter to themselves to say it's going to be okay. And that's fine. My problem is the whole movie seems about 20 to 30 years out of step. The idea of the gay prom and that controversy, we've seen those. They've come and they've gone to the point where it's not even really newsworthy anymore. It might be a small headline for a half a second on MSNBC.
Maybe that's why I enjoyed it more. It's 30 or 40 years in the past. That's a legit point. And the fact it didn't play long on Broadway. It played 2018 to 2019. It closed before COVID. So that was telling to me, like, that means for a play like that to close, that means you're only got half full houses or quarter full houses by the end. So
They probably didn't care because by then they'd likely inked that Netflix deal.
yeah, exactly. They inked that baby.
Yeah, I want to talk briefly about the young girl Emma Nolan, played by Jo Ellen Pellman. Is this her first thing? Did she have an introducing credit? I think.
I would have to link her IMDb page, but or see her IMDb page because I thought she was fantastic, and her voice. She had such a crystal clear, beautiful Broadway voice that wasn't off-putting. Sometimes they're a little too high, but I
Hmm.
can't stand when it's too soprano-y in a musical. What was one of the lines that made me? Oh, when he wrote the acceptance song, he said it's a very humane key, which Andrew Reynolds.
Oh, yeah, and she's great. She looked like she could play Elizabeth Moss's younger sister in a movie.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true. That's a good
and
point.
my one critique of her, I think, is that, and this I think might just be a musical flourish thing, but even in the dramatic singing scenes, like where she's talking to her secret girlfriend who's on the cheerleading squad,
Right.
uh, they're breaking up, and yet she's got this big smile on her face because she's singing, and I'm like, no, 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 no. The theatrics need to be dialed back a little bit, just a bit, because
She
that's
did it.
creeping
I
me out.
mean, I like the contrast that they put in, where they wanted to get her on TV, but she says, "No, I know a better way in which to spread the message," and she did a video that went viral. But I thought that was handled well,
Mhm.
because then all the chorus of other voices coming in, and I thought to myself, what kind of person? Because I felt very outsidery when I was in high school, and I was thinking, what kind of person would I be if I had the access to the world that all high schoolers have now? You really don't have to feel that outsidery because you can find people on the web. Now, this, you know, given that it's a danger too, but you can also find
Yes.
people on the web that that share your distinction. A gay teenager can reach out to other gay teenagers, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas in 1970, you couldn't do that. You couldn't do it. You were stuck where you were, and that's when you had the fence around you in the Indiana town. And it was interesting to me and intriguing. The song that you wrote that had the very humane key was called the Acceptance Song. And as you recall, it was at the truck rally. Instead of our usual halftime show, we're going to have people from New York singing Song of Tolerance.
It, re- it, al-
Oh!
it almost reminded me of that scene from Borat where he goes to the rodeo.
Yes. But they didn't, he just started it, and then they cut. And I thought that was interesting because obviously that was a longer parody in the stage play. And his whole Juilliard thing was very funny.
Yeah, and he's walking
So
around. I think when he rolls into town, he's wearing the John Lennon New York T-shirt.
yeah,
Like,
we're liberals from New York. The
oh,
another thing that got me, which another thing that's indicative of high school today, I think, is that they have these elaborate asking to the prom ceremonies, which they sort of quickly made fun of in the that's why I said it's the Guineas and sings. But anyway, uh, it occurred to me that you have to have a choreographer these days because a lot of people dancing is big. When I was a kid, nobody danced. Nobody danced at school dances. Now they have elaborate, together things, which wasn't too far off, I believe. And I think as a high schooler today, you need a choreographer. So, kids, tell me
yeah.
your choreographer.
Well, that's the thing is I don't know. I haven't been to a high school in a long time.
Well, it'll come up for you very soon, sir. In about
What are you trying to imply? No, uh,
I don't know.
no,
You tell me.
yeah, I'll be a chaperone for
What
my
do you think
oldest.
was the strongest number, and what do you think was the weakest?
The
And you
weakest.
don't have to see the exact title, just who sang it at what point, or
Geez, it's weird because they all kind of run together, and that's the problem I
they're
have.
very similar sounding. Yes, I agree there.
Well, it's not even so much that when I'm much new. I'm very new relatively to musicals.
Okay.
So what tends to happen is I have to watch a musical at least twice before I observe the songs because I'm a film critic. This sounds terrible. I'm a film critic foremost. So I'm paying attention to the typical
Yeah.
film critic things like about the story and the performances, and the songs will register as, oh, that was cool. That was
Yeah.
memorable in the sense that if
Yeah.
I listen to it again, I know I'm going to be humming it for 20 years.
Right.
So I got bigger impressions. I could tell you more about the songs that I liked, where they were in the story points.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's easier than trying to think of the specific songs.
I liked Corden's piece when he's talking about how he's going to be going to the prom with Emma. I
That's the
thought that was
greatest.
cute.
The
Um,
greatest.
yeah, I think the highlight for me, we've already talked about it, and you mentioned the name of the song, so I'm going to trust you to remember it. But it's Keegan Michael Key's song about going to Broadway.
We look to you.
We look to you. What I love about that is there is a moment in that song where he's sitting in the Broadway theater watching Dee Dee, Meryl Streep's character, do this flourish, which turns out to be from Swallow the Moon. And it's got a very particular context in that the first time we see it, it's like, oh, he's just watching her at a show. I think they might have had a couple of clips from other shows because it turns out he's a big fan. He's been going to New York for years to
Right.
watch her
Right.
perform. But later on, after they have a falling out and she's trying to win him back over by proving that she's a decent person, she performs that full song. And I
Right.
believe it's that part where we flash to her performing that full number on Broadway. And then we
And a quick
realize that,
flash to him in the audience as well.
yeah. So in the first scene, it's not necessarily even a comedic moment. It's more of a throwaway, like, oh, here's generic her singing on stage. But later on, we see what that meant to her as a career and as a character that would become the key to unlocking her, like breaking out of this wall that she's put up around herself. Because, of course, she's a small town girl, was fed up with small town life, went to New York, became a star, and has completely forgotten her humanity over decades
Right.
of being adored. So she has to
Right.
unlock that, and she's kind of an obnoxious character, but she's also very sweet. And I love that he was again, I could have an entire film focused on these two characters working through their stuff.
I've been a musical fan since I was a kid. So I'm pretty practiced in both stage and film musicals. I've pretty much seen all the major film musicals. And so I can look with two eyes on it, meaning the film critic and the appreciator of musicals.
I
But
aspire to be that someday.
my there's so many good ones. But I really, really enjoyed Barry is Going to the Prom, because how often does somebody get to speak to their younger self in a way that, is sort of like a complete joy. Now, this goes to my next subject in a sense, but I was going to say my least favorite song was the Nicole Kidman song with her, the Zaz song, because Fosse has been done to death, number one, and number two, it wasn't good Fosse, and it was obvious. It was obvious that Pellman had a hard time even becoming the jazz hands person. That
Hmm.
wasn't her style. Therefore, it was sort of forced on her. And even when she did do the pose, you're just like, nah, it's not
Yeah.
working for me. But my absolute favorite was Love Thy Neighbor with Andrew Rannells doing the whole Bible shtick and the whole thing at the mall. Loved it. Loved it.
That's, for me, that slides more on the least favorite numbers part. Strictly, no, I'm going to say strictly for story reasons. I think it was performed great. I love the choreography. I love the mall setting. I loved the going down the escalator and talking to the different high school
That's so
kids. And
great.
then, like, once he's
So
talked to
great.
one, he moves down and talks to the next, or moves
That's
up or
great.
something. It's really cool and inventive. And I wonder how they pulled that off on Broadway, or if that's something they could only do in the movies.
I don't
But
think it probably was set someplace else, maybe a school gym or something.
But I guess my issue with it was it goes back to this idea of what the people who wrote this musical possibly think of small town Midwestern America, which gets very complicated. There is the Bible Belt, and people have, there are swaths of people have very conservative Christian beliefs, but especially because this town is painted as somewhat multicultural, I have to sit here and wonder, is that the only religion you could be talking about right now? Or is it just the one that's the easiest target?
I just think that, again, that wasn't the focus. The focus was to create, the separate camps and they're going to have stereotypes in both, and they did. Um, so I just think that Love Thy Neighbor is one of those rousing anthems that really can. I was thinking about our recent troubles, and Love Thy Neighbor is something that, and I don't mean to get sappy, but it's one of those religious elements that is really a golden rule. And
Hmm.
we can't do it now because you don't agree with me is BS, because life is too short. Um, but just to go back to the Barrys going to the prom thing, there has been a lot of criticism of James Corden playing a gay man in this musical. Let me read you a few of these.
Great. Here it
The
comes.
Guardian described it as spectacularly misjudged. Samuel Spencer's Newsweek described it as offensively miscast. Tim Roby of The Telegraph wrote it made him embarrassed to be gay, while Richard Lawson of Vanity Fair named it one of the worst performances of the 21st century.
Nope. Nope. That would be the wrong James Corden film. That would be Cats from 2019. Now,
Well,
is it?
everybody was bad in that one. But
I disagree. I am a vehement Cats defender, sir.
So am I.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm a musical fan. Do you think I didn't like that? Come on.
I
It
know
was
some
so
musical fans who
goofy.
didn't
It's
like
so
Cats.
surreal.
No,
People got too. That was one of those groupthink efforts.
yeah, for sure.
You know.
Now,
Anyway, go ahead.
help me out with this, because
Okay.
I don't watch James Corden's show,
Okay.
his talk show. I first saw him in that Keira Knightley, Mark Ruffalo movie, Begin Again, I think, where he was like Keira Knightley's best friend. That was the first time I'd seen him. This is long before. This is like 10 years ago,
Right.
or 7 years ago.
Long before he got his talk show.
Right. So I thought he had a certain charm and personality. I like seeing him places. I just don't care to watch him like interview celebrities or drive around in cars singing with them. But I like him as a performer. I thought he was really good in this. Now, is the critique, because I haven't read these critiques. I've seen
Right.
some like random stuff about how
Well,
Corden sucks, but is it because is he not gay? I
he's
don't know
not
anything.
gay.
He's not. Okay. I don't know
And
anything
they're
about his personal
saying
life.
a lot of the criticism focuses on the fact that he's using gay stereotypes to create his character. But I was thinking to myself, if I was playing a gay man, how you wouldn't want to play him doing the laundry at home. You want to play him as anybody gets played, with their facade intact. So basically, what Corden is doing, and maybe I'm overanalyzing it, but he is creating the facade, the survival facade that a lot of gay men use when they go out to the world. You know, the snappy comebacks, the hair flips, the everything, like, it's all designed to bring other people to you, number one, and number two, create a facade for yourself so they don't have to see the real you. We all do that. So
yeah, and honestly, the facade is a great word, because when he encounters his mother, who had, his parents kicked him out when he was a teenager,
yeah,
when he came out, there's a tearful kind of reunion between the two of them, and that facade kind of breaks down. He's not, and it gradually breaks down. He's like dismissing her, like, nope, nope, you go away. But then
right,
eventually
right.
they come to understand each other. So it's not a one note caricature performance. I think you're hitting it closer to the head. Corden is playing a person who has a certain affect as a way to protect himself, and also probably to move about in the world, because
Right.
it's an odd critique to say this is an offensive stereotype or whatever, because honestly, if you turn on TV and movies now, the typical portrayal of the gay man is something that 20 years ago probably would have been considered stereotypically offensive. It's
Well,
been
yeah, I
almost
mean,
overly embraced in a lot of senses.
that's a good point. Go and look at the people playing gay men now, even gay men playing gay men. You just, but one of the things that I did note when going over a lot of the negative reviews on RT, I was like, maybe it's just an age thing. Because to me, Corden's portrayal of a gay man is pretty much how I experience most of the gay men in my life, for example.
That's an interesting choice of words there, Pat.
They're always the facade is the key. what kind of persona am I going to put out there to the world versus who I am. And I think your notion of him, by the way, Tracy Ullman plays his mother, two Brits playing two Americans. I love it. But
In a completely non-Tracy Ullman,
right. In fact, you
performance.
had to look it up if you were going to think it was her.
At first,
I
I
mean,
thought it
she
was
can
Amy
carry
Sedaris.
herself in her.
At first, I thought it was Amy Sedaris, but no.
If it isn't Tracy Ullman, it's Amy Sedaris. I was glad to see Mary Kay place it. Did you
Yeah.
see Diane, by the way? That's a must see.
What's that? I don't
It's
know.
an independent film. I saw it at Tribeca 2 years ago, and it won the best film. And they had a big party for her, and I got to meet Mary Kay Place and all this. But anyway, she plays a woman doing long-term care for somebody, and then the pressures of that and the situations of that, and it goes into a surreal kind of flight of fancy where we're almost like not even sure we're seeing a real narrative. We might be seeing something that is being dreamed. Anyway,
All right,
it's a
I
very
just
interesting
wrote it
film.
down. We might have to talk about
Diane,
that. Yeah.
just simply called Diane.
All
But
right.
so to me, that was her comeback. But I hadn't seen her since there, and she does a great little thing as Grandma B. So the one who accepted that her, she was when she was essentially kicked out of her house too. So they were. And when she comes out in the dress, yes, darling, if they're doing a remake of Little House on the Prairie, you'll be perfect. But
Yeah.
I believe too that the Corden criticism was unfair. I think they're focusing too much on the fact he's straight.
Yeah.
And straight men have been playing gay men since, maybe we're in a period in our lives where it should be, Jim Parsons can only do so many roles, but yeah, but maybe we are to the point where gay men should play gay men. Okay.
Well,
I accept that, but I don't think you should pillar Mr. Corden because of it, because I think as far as a song and dance man, he was great. I mean, his scene with his younger self, that's a killer. There's so many killer numbers in this. That's a
yeah,
killer number. The religion is killer. The Meryl Streep number is killer.
I agree. And now, I just to close out this Corden thing,
Yeah,
I know it's a very sensitive topic,
it
especially
is.
today, but I disagree. I think that it's a fashion to say that that you should essentially stay in your lane. If you're,
Right.
straight, you need to play straight. If you're gay, you need to play,
Well, I don't believe in that. I'm just saying that perhaps we've come to the day where that's the case.
and I'm hoping that we look back 20 years from now and say, man, that was a really kind of misguided 10 years. Because I think, and this is a joke, but it's sort of not. We've had so many gay actors playing straight, not only characters, but playing straight actors for
Yeah,
decades, because the
yeah.
stories always come
Talk
out
about
usually after they're
shock.
dead. Right. So it's just frustrating because the Corden performance, and I would have to have gone back to see the Broadway show.
Yeah,
That the way that the Barry character is written, I can't see him being played by a gay actor as less flamboyant than he is played by James Corden. I feel like
yeah,
if they've gotten a gay actor to play that
right,
role, I see him playing it exactly that same way. But
right,
it's almost like you can't, and I'm gonna tread lightly here. It's like you can't, even if you're doing a dead-on accurate, uh, you know, accent of someone who is a different race than you. If you're not making fun of, you're just trying to impersonate, like, yeah, my friend, Joshi, he said to me the other day, I'm going to
yeah,
have to speak in my flat, boring Midwest affect instead of trying to do Apu from The Simpsons,
right,
because that's just wrong. So
right.
even though Corden is interpreting a character honestly, and perhaps even the way he may have seen it on Broadway, he
Right.
just can't win.
That's a good point. And also, too, what I felt was interesting, and it's going back to what you said before about casting, that Ryan Murphy decided to cast this with stars,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the play intentionally didn't cast it with stars because they wanted to give it's part of the theme. They wanted to give those background players a chance to come forward. The woman who played Meryl Streep's role in The Prom also played Meryl Streep's role in Mamma Mia on Broadway. So she could have the distinction of having Streep stealing two roles from her. But interestingly enough, I found this out. A lot of the lines, the throwaway lines, are references to these people's own career. Whereas Meryl Streep was up for the movie version of Evita. And remember, she says, they said I was too old to play Evita, in the
Oh,
song.
okay.
And it came down like this between her and Madonna. Of course, it comes down then to the marketing. And if
Sure.
you're gonna, Madonna as Evita Peron, come on, you
Yeah.
know. So that, and of course, Meryl Streep plays Mamma Mia and in The Prom because she's a name. So it's just kind of all ironic all around. But
And
yeah, I think Corden definitely got a bad deal. And you're right, it was written the way it was written, and he was interpreting it the way he was interpreting it. And the worst performance of the 21st century, I've got about 15 before that, or 15, probably 100, a
well, and,
thousand.
well, yeah. I
And we're
mean,
starting in 2001.
well, I could also say, worst performance. That just seems to me like, because it's at least a solid performance. It's at least very good. I thought it was pretty great. When you say worst, I just imagine that being kind of subject to whatever offense they were taking at the subtext of him being
Yeah,
cast in the
I
film.
really would have to read the whole Vanity Fair review because I have to see the context of that worst performance of the
But
21st century. But I'm almost sure it was about the stereotypes. So,
but I mean, just going back to it, and we're not going to solve this problem here today. But
no.
going back to what I was saying about James Corden earlier, I'm not that familiar with him. I know nothing about his personal life. So when I see him showing up playing this gay man, and then I hear there's backlash, I'm like, maybe he not gay? Does he like, I have no, it doesn't, I don't know
Well,
anything
that's
about him as a person. So it's like,
right.
do I have to have the biographical details of everyone I watch on screen so I know if they're quote unquote okay to play this part? I'm getting mad. Sorry.
Um, did you see White Tiger yet?
No.
Oh, okay. Anyway, it's a new Netflix film. If you want to start, and I'm just bringing this up as an example, but what's the background of the lead character there? He's playing Hindu, but maybe he's Muslim, or et cetera, et cetera. You start parsing these things, and you're not getting the best person in the role because you're limited to, that pool out there. But again, we just may be in a period because of our sensitivity level, whereas we need to cast accordingly.
I
I
like
don't
that
know.
cast. I like that cast accordingly.
Cast accordingly. That could have been one of the songs. Cast accordingly. I've
Oh,
One of the things that impressed me about Corden too, about song and dance, first, he has a really great singing voice, and secondly, his movement, he moves like a cat, no pun intended. He does move very well for a big guy,
that's so true. He
Yeah,
looks like a heavier set dude, but he's
yeah.
he's not exactly Gene Kelly, but he's like the
No,
Gene Kelly of overweight people.
the
Um,
the scene where he's dancing with his younger self is tremendous. I mean, they do that line thing where they come to the camera and go back. I love that number. Sorry, Barry
no,
goes to the prom.
well, and speaking of the prom,
Yes.
two things. One,
Uh-huh.
it's my last story nitpick because it's kind of a big one, but there's that whole conceit of the town agrees because I think of a court order to have an inclusive prom. Uh, all of the students, all of the students get together and they have a text thread where they
Yeah.
don't include Emma and they don't happen to include her secret lesbian cheerleader
Yeah. There's a
girlfriend.
lot of complexity there.
Right. So that they can have the empty gymnasium that Emma shows up at, except for her four, Broadway friends. Everyone else is at the big fancy hotel prom, right? Uh, so at the end of the movie, they throw another alternate prom With a
Uh,
nice nod, I think, to the movie Empire Records, where everyone starts throwing out their credit cards to fundraise this thing. But at the end, when they open up the doors to this magnificent prom, the biggest flood of gay, trans, outsider kids comes in, and I'm like, all right, so up until this very moment, I had assumed that Emma and I want to get her name right. What was the cheerleader's name? Because I feel
hold
terrible
on.
just referring to her as Ariana DeBose as Alyssa Green. So I was under the impression that because the attitudes in this town, in this school, that Alyssa and Emma were the only two gay characters in this high school.
I do believe that was sort of a coming out. And again, it's the conceit of a musical that everything comes out well in the end. Everything. This is how life should be.
I know,
We're
but
all
I
out.
get
We're
that.
all dancing together.
I get that, and that goes
We're
back to
all
my
doing
idea
American
of this
accents.
This that get well, that gets back to my idea of this being conceived as like a kid 30 years ago writing a story for himself where it does all work out and it's all great, right? But
Yeah.
as a practical matter, where did all these kids come from? They can't be from that high school because that would have been conspicuous is the wrong word, but I don't feel like it would have been as big a problem. I certainly think there would have been more allyship for Emma because she's painted as being a complete loner. Like no one talks to her except her cheerleader girlfriend, who, if they're trying to keep the relationship on the down low, they spend a lot of time alone together in public, surrounded by people giving them sideways
Again,
looks.
musical conceits. You got to start cramming on your musicals.
I gotta. But no, the last point, which is not a criticism, it's a high point of praise.
Uh-huh.
The scene where Kerry Washington uh, comes back to the dance and accepts her daughter and says, we've got a lot to talk about, but whatever is going on, you're my daughter and I love you. It
Right.
was that alone was worth having Kerry Washington in that part because I didn't start bawling, but I definitely started crying. I'm like, this is beautiful. This is just
Right.
wonderful.
Right. Well, and like I said, I had nothing against Kerry Washington playing the role because I think she's a pretty good presence, a good actor. Uh, but you didn't need a name in that role, and you didn't
Sure.
need a name in Nicole's role. But Ryan Murphy's strategy was to get people in the seats or get people streaming. So
Yeah.
let's put the stars in. So
I know this was, do you know if this was always a Netflix movie or
I
was
no, it
it
wasn't.
dumped?
Oh, it was supposed to come out as a theatrical.
And that's
But
one of the,
I think Netflix bought it. But look at the model um, before before our pandemic situation. The model was to release the film in theaters, get the 6 to 8 week run, and then down the line put it up free on net or free, put it up to stream on Netflix. So like the two popes was that strategy.
well, and
Now now we don't have that strategy. As everybody has said, this has accelerated the way we're watching movies by 10 years.
oh yeah. And this is one of those, I think, unfortunate COVID casualties because it's such a big movie. They really went for it. I would have liked to have seen this on a big screen to have had that opportunity.
Oh yeah,
My
it
only
would be
concern is that
gorgeous.
given the drubbing that it's gotten critically, I just feel like if this had happened, no one would have let James Corden near a musical ever
Oh,
again because it would have been Cats in
that
December and
poor
then Prom the
bastard.
following December.
And really, he wasn't that significant in Cats, but he was a name, and you notice the name on the on the cast list. So um, I'm trying to think of anything else I wanted to bring up before we. I did write. I did like Nicole on the cowbell in the Meryl Streep number. They showed a quick shot of her on the cowbell.
Oh, I might have missed that. Okay.
More cowbell. And I just I love the narcissistic character. That's one of those characters that always feeds comedy to me. So that's why I love the hotel scene. Here it is, this typical chain hotel. They're asking for suites and cabins and the hotel doctor as if they never knew anything about the outside world. Hilarious thing. Uh, let's see. It, By the way, I live on the corner of Wilson Avenue and Bob Fosse Way.
Oh, really?
Bob Fosse was born on the street that is the cross street near me. It's like he was born about 4 blocks away from me.
Gee, I did. That's awesome. I didn't know that.
And the Godspell Kids is a reoccurring piece of humor. Again, very inside theater, but very, very funny. Very well done. And then he had one good line too, and I had to look this up. I had to declare bankruptcy after my self-produced notes on a scandal, which is
Yeah, I caught that too, and it struck me as like I'm supposed to be laughing right now, but I don't quite know why. It seems clever, but I don't know what notes on a scandal.
again inside theater stuff that but yeah, that's pretty much. And I also wanted to tell you a potential title for our next exploration
Okay.
in March, I assume, or
Or
what is it?
February.
I
Yeah,
assume.
yeah. You're a month ahead.
We probably should be doing something for Black History Month, but um, the film is called "Don't Worry, We'll Think of a Title," and it's from 1966. And what intrigues me about this is that the cast, a significant part of the cast of the Dick Van Dyke Show, the secondary characters, somehow got the financing for this film, and they're the lead in it, meaning Rose Marie, Maury Amsterdam, Richard Deacon, all the secondary characters in the old Dick Van Dyke Show suddenly are doing this movie called Don't Worry, We'll Think of a Title. And only in the 1960s can you do something that casual and get away with it. I've never seen it. I know nothing about it. Maybe I read a little of the description on Wikipedia, but I just, it intrigues me to death. Sort of like Skidoo. Remember Skidoo?
Oh, Skidoo.
Oh, Skidoo. So
Oh,
it's the same sort of premise. There's probably no LSD in it, but you might want to take some before you watch this movie.
well, yeah, I'll definitely keep that in mind because you're right. That might be a good March title because, yeah,
Okay,
it could be fun to do something for Black History Month.
I think so too, and I I can throw out, think of some. I'd like to do something I haven't seen
Yeah,
because I've
that's
seen a lot of you know Black History Month movie. There's some '60s stuff that intrigued me, and I'll throw you some titles later. But like independent stuff that was first kind of dealing with the post civil rights issues
hmm.
that African Americans have to endure. Also, Watermelon Man. I've never seen that. Have you heard of that?
Can we even talk about that on this show? That sounds that sounds kind of dicey.
Well, it's an African American plays a white man, so he starts off in white makeup and wakes up in the morning and finds out he's black. So I don't know if that maybe that hits a little too close to home for you, but
I am half a black man trapped
I
in
know.
half a white man's body. So yes, let's do water. Can you even find Watermelon Man, or has it been stripped from the internet?
I don't know. I think you can still find it. There's also a movie called The Man about the first black president. I was reminded of it the other day. And interestingly enough, it's based on a really cheesy Irving Wallace novel that I loved when I was a kid. And then when I found out there was a film version of it with the screenplay by Rod Serling, by the way, the
Ooh.
I watched it and I couldn't get into it. It was just too. So years later, I read this story. James Earl Jones plays the lead, and somebody, when Barack Obama was elected, they go, "Hey man, you played the first African American president in the movie. What do you think of this?" And he goes, "It was intended to be a TV movie. They bumped it up to the theatrical release." And if that were the case, I would have asked for a better budget, because he said we didn't do the film we wanted to do. And then on the background of that, because it was a television movie, they thought they wouldn't be able to get sponsors because of the theme. So there you go. Because the audacity of a black man being president in 1970 something was a lot different than it is now, obviously.
Was that like the precursor? I know Robert Guillaume wasn't the president, but was that like the precursor to Benson?
No, this was just based on, like I said, the cheesy Irving Wallace novel, which was a shocking thing that
Well, I know,
that
but I'm just wondering if because that was out there in the culture, then
maybe.
you could have like this sitcom where, you know, because I know
To
Benson was
me,
one of my dad's
everything
favorite
is
shows.
6 degrees of Benson, so you don't have to tell me that one. Everything.
That's a challenge. That sounds like an upcoming mini
that's
series.
that's a bigger challenge than the Kevin Bacon thing. Let me tell you there.
Yeah. All
Although
right.
I don't know. There's a lot of strange stars that permeate that thing, like Rene Auberjonois. He was in MASH. You could start going.
And
You could
also
start.
Star Trek Deep Space Nine. He was on there for like a
There
billion
you go.
seasons.
There's
Yeah.
more connections there. I
Man.
mean, I don't even think I pronounced his name correctly, but
It's
that's
Auberginois.
that's my thing anyway. So,
That is kind of your thing. I love that. Don't ever learn to pronounce names because it's endearing.
well, I've had to watch it more because obviously when you do the radio thing, you don't want to insult people by not pronouncing. I finally got to know David Oyelowo. I
Mm.
finally learned how, because he's come up a couple times. He was in the George Clooney movie that got scraped over the coals there.
Midnight Sky. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, that
Yeah.
one,
Oh no, go ahead.
the problem with that one is that theme has been done to death. They weren't adding anything new to that type of theme. As I said, people in space talking like college stoners, at midnight has been done to death, starting with Star Trek. There wasn't anything new. It had some nice set pieces in it, but it just laid there as a movie. Did you see it?
No, I haven't watched it yet.
Oh,
I'm,
okay.
that's the nice thing about this conversation. A bunch of talks I'm having this month is I'm catching up on a bunch of stuff, and
Sure.
I still haven't put out my best of 2020 list because there's still things I'm trying to cram in. Like I need to see this before I make any decisions. I've got
And
my
that's the toughest thing about
yeah.
doing the list at the end of the year. I mean, I just get nuts about that, especially this year because there was a lot of hidden things in the firmament because nothing, you know, if it didn't release to a theater, release to VOD or wherever, or on the music box circuit or so. There was a music box film I saw, the 20th Century, and I think the only reason I saw it is because I read that they didn't do any set pieces. They did everything on a set rather than do an outdoor thing. This turned out to be just great. I really love this film, and it ended up in my top 10. So you just never knew where these things were coming up on the 20th century.
Yeah, I've got a post-it note here that front to back is full of titles now that I gotta
I know,
track down. I love it.
and you just get I just and I ask people, like, for example, I'm not a big horror guy. I'm just not. So Rob Colger recommended The Possessor to me. Did you see The Possessor?
Oh, that's on my list.
Okay, I'll say no more then. And then also the one with bad hair. The other one was the other one. There's a guy on Reputation. That one
I,
I thought that was interesting.
I haven't seen Bad Hair. It was I got
It's in the neon. It's in the neon package.
yeah, I know. I had heard some, not that great things about it after following some initial buzz. So I'm
Yeah,
like, maybe
I could
at some
I
point.
could see the mix in it, but I did like it. I didn't love it. I liked it.
Yeah.
The neon package is always interesting because, and I'm talking me, not anybody else, but 9/10 of them I haven't seen. I've
Hmm.
seen a few of them, but I haven't seen most of them. And boy, you can find some gems in there,
Well, I
because
got to say that was
they have a lot of sophistication in their distribution.
that was sort of and we'll wrap up here in a minute, but
Sure.
one of the things I was most proud of and most struck by this year is when I got the Neon package. And for those who don't know what we're talking about, Neon is a film, it's a film distribution company. They come out with a lot of like indie films, but like A24 over the last half decade, their cachet has just grown and grown and
Yeah,
grown,
they
right?
really are rising.
But each year, critics get, as part of award season, we get what's called the Neon Book, which is a little hardcover kind of cardboard thing with all of the discs in it of all the films they released over the year. And
Very well done.
this past year, I was relieved because I had seen most of the movies in that package over the course of the year because I've been at home with COVID. It's like, just, I guess I'll check this out.
I was still, I still didn't see, again, it's different because on the radio part of it, I have to do mainstream stuff. I can't see everything, and I can't certainly see something that the Wisconsin audience is not going to see. So
yeah, it's always a balance, but we saw Prom. We've talked about Prom, and I'm glad. I'm actually higher on the movie now than when we first started our discussion.
well, and again, I think your critique of it was very much in line with a lot of the criticisms I've seen, that it doesn't, as a narrative, somehow it doesn't have the cohesion as other musical narratives have had. And then it just becomes, okay, it's just an inclusion musical. And but it hit my musical soul, and it didn't end up on it was in my top 25, but not my top, not that that means anything. When I put my top 10 together, I always have a paragraph of things from 25 to 11, just to go through that, just to see, well, here's what just missed. Like Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Loved the film, but had some issues with it that didn't create a top 10 situation for me. Same with One Night in Miami. Did you see that yet?
Yeah, I just saw that this week, and I'm very high on that
Oh,
movie.
cool.
And that answered a lot of the problems that I had with Ma Rainey's Black Bottom in terms
Interesting.
of, yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
I think they were similarly disarmed by the fact that they were plays first. To me, One Night in Miami had that thing of, ooh, here comes an important speech. Oh yeah, so important. but I loved seeing those guys come to life.
Yeah.
And my God, the people that they got to play those historical gentlemen were truly tremendous. The only one I didn't know of was Jim Brown. I thought, how do I know Jim Brown from 1963? I just know him as the grumpy old man of now. So I did go back and take a look at pictures. I didn't find any interview stuff, but I mean, as far as looking like him, the actor nailed it. And the Sam Cooke thing, I read more about Sam Cooke. I didn't know much about him. There has to be a great movie about his, with the same actor, about his death, because he died that same year at the end of the year, but from a gunshot wound.
Yeah.
That still is a mystery.
Yeah, I was reading a little bit about that too. I agree. There's so much. I'm going to be talking about One Night in Miami tomorrow, in fact. But the one thing I will say, and I said this to someone else, this movie could make a strong case for expanding the Best Actor category so that you could have enough slots for those four guys, and or having the historical first four-way tie for a Best Actor, because they are so terrific.
I think the Academy should have an ensemble category. That makes so much perfect sense because movies are so different now. And you can recognize a film for a great ensemble. It might not have the greatest of narratives, but you can certainly say, boom, these guys nailed it.
Yeah. That best ensemble, why not?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to cut our duo short.
No problem.
And appreciate you taking me to the prom, as it were. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to possibly talking. I can't even say this. Watermelon Man, maybe next month.
Hey, if you want, go for it. I'm way in. So,
all right.
But I'll throw you some other titles and we can talk about it offline, as it were. We're online now. Listen to Kicking the Seat every single day. He puts one out every day. Thank you.
Not quite, but yeah. But you are also Pat the Uber critic McDonald. You can be found at hollywoodchicago.com. So definitely check that out.
Yes,
And
please do.
yeah, we'll be talking real soon. Thanks again, man.
Blessings.
All right, bye.